What have your thoughts been in the last couple of games for Nebraska? I can imagine they've been pretty positive.
I mean, yeah. I mean, you go back to the Ohio State game, and that's a team. The last 2 years, the combined score has been 115 to 17. So, I mean, obviously, no one likes moral victories. The goal is to win the game. You look at the specific situation, though, and you see a drastic improvement when you look at Nebraska and how they played against Ohio State this year. So there's reasons for optimism for the future, and some excitement as well for the future. After that Ohio State game, you look at Illinois, and that's a game where the offense. I mean, everyone knows for 7 straight weeks we put up 450 plus yards of offense, and now we're starting to put up points because we were killing ourselves with almost 100 yards of penalties a game. We were averaging almost 3 turnovers a game. We were losing the penalty battle, the turnover battle. We were putting up all sorts of yards, but we'd only broken the 30-point barrier twice. And now, all of a sudden, in our last 4 games, we're averaging 46 points. We've broken 50 points twice with 54 and 53 versus Illinois and Minnesota. And so, all of a sudden, you look at it, and when you're moving the ball up and down the field, but you don't shoot yourselves in the foot and give the ball away or make yourselves go backwards, all of a sudden you end up in the end zone a lot more. So the offense is making great strides overall as far as discipline, as far as putting it in the end zone. And you got to be excited just because of all the youth. I mean, we got freshmen, sophomores on offense, so you got to be excited. Defensively, I mean, the concern defensively is, so we set a school record, 450 plus yards of offense for 7 straight games. Never been done in the history of Nebraska football. The concern is on defense, we're giving up an average of 450 yards a game throughout the season. So that's the concern on defense. Now, if you're looking for some signs of positivity, they've been there. For 3.5 quarters versus Northwestern, we gave up 14 points. The last half a quarter was a boondoggle. You look at Minnesota, we held them to 8 points in the first half, then their first 3 drives in the second half, they go on long scoring touchdown drives. You look at Ohio State, there was times in the Ohio State game when I'm like, there was 5 straight drives where our offense punted. It didn't do anything, and our defense kept us in the game, and then the defense got wore out and gave up over 200 rushing yards. So the defense is showing up in spurts. They're just not consistent. They're not able to do it for 4 full quarters. And the other thing that's a little bit, positive and to be excited about is last year through 12 games, we forced 12 turnovers. Through 10 games so far this year, we've forced 18. In our last 3 games, we've forced 11. So they've really picked up the pace on forcing turnovers, which is a calling card of an Eric Chenander defense. Tackles for loss, sacks, which we started out well with in the first game against Colorado, 7 sacks, 7 tackles for loss. We haven't been able to keep up anything close to that pace, but the turnovers are starting to pick up. We just got to get to the point where ultimately we can slow other teams down if we're unable to force a turnover on the defensive side of the ball.
How difficult is it to play defense though in this like era where Nebraska's average time of possession is under 2 minutes on a scoring drive or something like that? I think I saw that this week. Just how difficult is that to just flip that around that quick, and does that just emphasize the point of turnovers even more?
Yeah, it's football. Football is so much more of an offensive game. The rules are becoming so much more helpful to the offense. It just seems to keep changing that way. Every couple of years, some big rule happens and it favors the offense. So, but I look at when Charlie McBride was coaching, and obviously it's Eric Chenander's first year at Nebraska, and he only had 2 years at UCF. People point to UCF as like their defense gave up points and yards, and honestly, they turned the program around as a whole so quickly down there. He only had 2 years as their defensive coordinator. He never really got a chance to get his defense going because they turned everything as a whole around so fast. So he's never had 3 or 4 years to get something rolling. Now, you look at, I was talking about Charlie McBride, and you look at, I forget how long he coached for the Huskers, 20, 25 years, something like that. He had 10 defenses that end up ranked in the top 10 in total defense. And, we'd like to get to the point. I know offenses are better. I know our offense isn't on the field long. In fact, one of my question marks is how does our offense affect our team as a whole, specifically the defense, because it makes their jobs a little bit harder. So while the offense is putting up some awesome numbers, how does that affect the team as a whole? So for me, our defense, if we could get to the point where we're consistently forcing turnovers, tackles for losses, and sacks, and we could be a top 20 defense, I think that's how that'd be the best for the whole entire team as a whole. And I will say this, I mean, offenses are putting up points, but somebody has to be a top 10 team in total defense in the country. I mean, those points by the offense might be higher, but somebody's got to be top 10, top 20, so we might as well be one of them at some point.
Well, speaking of one of those defenses, Michigan State coming into Lincoln this weekend. This kind of a strength versus strength battle here, the defense versus especially the way Nebraska's been running the football the last few games. What do you see out of that Nebraska offense and how they can kind of gash some yardage out of the Spartan defense?
Yes, well, I think the big key for our offense is going to be being able to run the ball because, I mean, Michigan State's the number 20 ranked total defense in the country. They're the number 1 ranked defense against the rush. They're giving up an average of 76 yards on the ground per game. And I think in their last 2 games, I'm pretty sure it's like 64 yards they've allowed on the ground. And one of those games was versus Ohio State. We're averaging 227 rush yards a game. So the big key for me for our offense, I don't expect us to go for 200, 250, but we got to be balanced. We have to maintain the run-pass option to keep Michigan State's defense off balance. If they make us one-dimensional, we're going to be in trouble. So we got to get to 100, maybe 150 yards rushing. Is my big key for our offense in this game, so we can maintain that balance on offense. So for me, that's going to be the intriguing matchup. Michigan State doesn't play a ton of spread teams. I mean, they played Ohio State last week, played pretty well against them. But you watch how they played versus Utah State, which is a comparable, not the same offense, but comparable offense. And they struggled in that Week 1 matchup versus Ohio State or versus Utah State. So I think there are absolutely some things that we can exploit. I think Michigan State's a big physical defense. I think spreading them out gives Nebraska the edge because they don't play a ton of offenses like that.
Nebraska, the last time I think they played Michigan State was 2015. What do you remember about that game? I know the circumstances are a little different this time around, but kind of similar in the same way where Nebraska is, under 500 at Michigan State, not ranked, but still having a decent season. Just what do you remember from that 2015 matchup and that crazy catch at the end?
Yeah, I was in my in-laws' house. I remember this is actually something I've never shared. So I was in the middle of losing 100 pounds because I had retired just right before that, maybe a few months before. And I was 320, and I wanted to get all the way down to 220, what I weighed my senior year of high school. And so before the game, I had this workout regimen that I would do, and my in-laws do not have that at their house, any equipment. So I was outside, walking up and down, back and forth in a field behind their house. And I did this for like an hour straight to try to get some of my calories burnt that I was working on. So that's one thing I remember because I've never done that at any other point in my life. Just walk back and forth in this field and just listen to my iPod for like an hour. It was probably the funniest thing. It was watching me. The other thing I remember in their living room watching the game and just everyone going bananas and getting the big win. And that was our first win versus a ranked opponent or a top 10 ranked opponent since like 2001 or something. And it was just a big-time win for the Huskers. Memorial Stadium was going bananas. Everyone was going crazy. So for this weekend, I think if you look at the single game, it's probably not as big of a win, but if you look at the impact as an overall whole, this game could mean more to the Husker program. Simply because we now have the hindsight of 2020 and knowing that, hey, it didn't work out with Mike Riley, that was a great win, but in the overall scheme of things, it didn't impact much. I think this game could have a big impact. Because if we're able to finish this season after starting 0-6, and we can win, let's say, 5 of those last 6 games, which includes a Michigan State team that was preseason number 11, 19 returning starters off a team that won 9 games a year ago, has some high expectations coming into this year. And then if we could go into Iowa, a team that has beaten us and throttled us for 3 straight years, and get that win, I think it would be huge going into the next season and going into the near future. And so for me, this game, in the overall grand scheme of things, even though Michigan State's 6-4 versus number 6 in the country, like they were a few years ago, this game could actually mean more to Husker football.
I think the last line I saw was 1.5 points in favor of Michigan State. Are you expecting a close game like that?
Yeah, I mean, Michigan State's offense isn't going to run anybody off the field, and I think their defense. I mean, we have the capability of running them off the field more so than they do to us, simply because their offense just isn't that dynamic. Even though our defense needs some improvement and is capable of giving up big plays, I think it's going to be a close game just because their offense struggles, their defense is good. So I actually have the score 27-21 Nebraska. And my thing on defense, because Michigan State, I mean, we put up 46 points on average our last 4 games. We put up 53 and 54 points in 2 of our last 4 games. Michigan State's last 4 games, they put up 15 points. And in 2 of those games, they put up 7 and 6 points. So for me, on the defensive side of the ball, we struggled giving up big plays. Even to like Bethune-Cookman, they had some big plays on us. Michigan State's not going to march the ball up and down the field just consistently. They're just not good enough. But if we give them big plays, it makes their life easier. And so if we can limit the big plays on defense, I like our chances. And the ultimate reason I picked the Huskers is a lot of what I mentioned earlier. I mean, Michigan State had these big lofty expectations, and here they are. They've lost every game that means anything to them outside of Penn State. They're 6-4. They're not ranked. We're a team that started off 0-6. And now 3 of our last 4 games, and really since Purdue, but we've won 3 of our last 4 games. If you just watch the teams playing, we look like a team that's competing for a Big Ten title or a college football playoff spot. Just the way the kids are playing with energy and enthusiasm. And so for me, I question how interested Michigan State is in this game. And I think our excitement level is going to be so much higher. I think the home field's going to help. And I got us winning 27-21.